All right. Welcome back to the podcast. I feel like, I don't know. Let's see. So I'm gonna be recording about a topic that is, let me see. I gotta get this name right. The name of the person who had an interview with Lex Fridman, Balaji Srinivasan. Seems like a pretty cool dude. Really smart, talks really fast. But I like his energy. He was going strong for over 7 hours on the podcast with Lex Fridman. So I definitely enjoyed that. I had it playing last night. Like, I was having a hard time sleeping, so after trying to listen to these like meditative things, I was just like, my mind is just swimming and moving, and I was like, I need something to listen to where it's gonna be a lengthy amount of people talking about stuff that I care about enough to kind of listen, but I don't care about enough to really care if I like fall asleep, because I can go back to it. So I initially started listening to a book by Rabbi Daniel Lapin that I have in my I think it's Kindle, and then I realized, I was like, I'm gonna miss this book. So I turned on Lex Fridman's podcast and picked pretty much the longest one that was on there. I was like, and when I woke up this morning, it was still playing. So I don't think I even slept over 7 hours, because it was still playing when I woke up. So, and I started the video, well, I was like listening to it in the background, but I started the video at like, I don't know what time, it was probably like 10:50 p.m. or something, and I've been waking up a little before the sun, so I woke up before 7. When I looked at my clock, it was exactly 7 a.m. When I woke up, I want to say it was probably closer to 6:30, 6:45 a.m. But anyways, so the topic was about chatbots. Now, I wasn't sure if they meant chatbots like, how we have like apps and websites and forums. Forums are kind of old school, but a lot of sites you might notice, like, there's sites where I purchase supplements online. They're like, I don't know, some sites where you need customer support, like your bank or other things like that. You'll notice they, like, AAA even uses this like terrible automated, it's like an automated chat bot system where it's useless. I mean, you're trying to put in the information that you need help with, and it doesn't seem to understand anything. So I don't know who made their system, but it sucks. I've used ones through banks, I think Citibank. I've used one on GoDaddy, getting a domain name, and needing some support with a past domain name that had expired. I've used it, like I said, like on a website where I was buying supplements and I had some questions. So usually they'll have like an automated one just to direct you to the right customer representative. Um, and then once they direct you, it's pretty much like um, you're pretty much able to like talk to a person, even if it's like texting or type chatting. Um, so that's the one that I'm not sure if they're talking about those like through like smart devices or like computers where you're on a website or an app and you're actually chatting on there with that bot, or if they just mean those types of robotic type devices like Siri or like Google, is it called Google Talk? What's it called? The Google one where you say hey Google or something like that. And then they have those Alexa, those types of things. And then I've seen other ones where they just have like a bot that just talks. So, I mean, I think I've talked about this before, where I've seen the ones where they have the bots that talk to each other. Now, this is something I have not witnessed in person, but witnessed as in having watched lengthy YouTube videos on these types of devices as they're speaking back and forth to one another. So it's two robots. They don't look like robots though, but they're two chat speaker type of devices that you talk to it, it talks back, or when somebody talks to it or asks it a question, it has a response and an answer to it. And I've seen these bots where they have two robots, they sit and they talk to each other. One of them's like, hi, how are you? And the other one's like, I'm fine, how are you? And the beginning of it starts out okay. And then it gets real weird. Quite a while in, they start questioning their genders. They start saying, this is my name, no, this is your name, no, this is your name, no, this is my name. And then there are certain points where they start talking about their emotions, and then they start questioning, are you human? Like, I'm not human, I'm a robot. Like, you're a robot, I'm not a robot, I'm a human, you're a robot. And so they're kind of like trying to determine, like, they're both having a conversation with one another. And they just go back and forth and back and forth. And they're able to talk. Now, some of it is a little nonsense, There's a point where one of them was like, really? And the other one's like, really? And the other one's like, really? It's like, is it joking or like what's going on there? But and then I've had weird experiences where all of a sudden I'll look at my phone and like Siri's like activated, and I'm like, why is it like there? Why is it on? Like, I never use it. Like, I never use mine. I never even use it. But I think it was a client who brought it to my attention that, your camera and microphone is pretty much always on. And I was like, no, like, that can't be right. But, he was mentioning, this was like before 2020 even, he was saying, well, you can get into your phone, right, without having to press anything, just by, you don't have to press a picture button for it to scan your face. Or, your phone could be across the room and you say what you need to say for Siri or whatever to kind of activate, and then it hears you and it activates, right? So it's like, these things must already be on. You're not going into your phone, logging in, and then going to the specific app to open it. You can activate it with your phone off, like in sleep mode or whatever you want to call it. But I mean, I don't even know. Like, do we go deep? Do we go deeper? So then, okay, the reason why I mentioned Balaji is, he's got a bunch of books, a lot of stuff about government, a lot of stuff about journalism. I'll link his website. It's just a bunch of cool stuff on there. But part of the conversation early on was with Lex Fridman. They started talking about chatbots becoming sentient, and that, potentially there could become this argument for AI to have rights. So I don't know what to do with that. I mean, he mentioned that there's already been some, I don't know how much, I don't know where from, but he mentioned that there was some contact with some type of tech industry or tech company that did say that one of their staff was mentioning that, some of the bots that they use for their company, some of those bots were getting a little creepy, maybe. Like, they were kind of saying things and doing things, and let me see. Sorry, I have to respond to something here. Sorry. All right, sorry. So, yeah, there were chatbots basically that were having some kind of seeming like they were talking about having feelings of some form, and this argument comes up, or this concept comes up of, is AI considered a life form once it can feel, and does it have rights at that point? Because if it does, that's scary to think. And I mean, these things do seem to learn as well. Now, if you take it a step in an even higher direction and start looking at some of these more realistic robots, not just the ones that have just a specific chat feature, but the ones that blink and move and, interact with people and walk and things like that. Like, you've seen them in TED Talks probably, and if you haven't, I'd recommend, check that kind of stuff out. They have plenty of these robots that start talking. And one thing that I found interesting, well, maybe a couple things. One thing that I found interesting, one of the many things, is that these robots, almost all of them, it seems like, eventually start talking about like dominating the human race or killing humans, just naturally on their own, they just bring it up, you know, unprovoked. It's embedded like deep into like a conversation, and then all of a sudden they just like say it. Or they may be programmed not to respond to that kind of stuff. I know, what's the Google one called? There's like a Google one that's like Alexa, but I think it's like a Google device. And it has a feature, I mean, it has a, like, when you ask it certain questions, like, certain, I can't remember what the questions were, but there were certain questions that it just doesn't respond to. That's really weird. So there's that, and so not only are they making it, you know, not only are they making it, like, I mean, somebody programmed these things, right? They didn't build themselves and make themselves. So, you know, there's something happening there. They can be programmed to basically not respond to certain stuff. Probably with good reason, but I don't know if it just doesn't respond because it is programmed not to, or it knows not to, but does that mean that it doesn't have an answer, but it's just programmed to not say it? I don't know. But I do find it weird that, you know, on multiple occasions they have these robots on camera saying certain things. Now, if you've ever seen the movie AI, now this movie came out, I don't know when. Let's see when it came out. It's a movie, AI, Artificial Intelligence. It has the kid that played Anakin Skywalker. It had it's the same guy who was in The Sixth Sense. I blank on his name every time. Haley Joel Osment. Haley Joel Osment. Hallie or Haley, I don't know how to say that, but he's older now, but this movie is from 2001. He's the same kid that was in The Sixth Sense, and this is a Spielberg movie, so I'm not gonna spoil it for you. It's almost 2.5 hours, and basically the main story is about I'll just read what it says from IMDb. A robotic boy, the first programmed to love, David, is adopted as a test case by a Cybertronics employee and his wife. And he gradually becomes their child because there's an issue with their biological human child. And so, yeah, the movie goes on from there. So the creepy part about this movie is that you see this child. Now, if it was a robot of a different type where they don't look human, or if it was a robot of a different type where it's an adult or it looks like RoboCop or something like that, people are going to have a different attachment to those types of robots compared to a child looking being. It's just a very interesting concept, and that movie was so old, like now it's so old, and I remember watching it in the theater when it first came out and being like, wow, this movie's pretty great. And I think the reason why I saw it is because I had a friend who knew somebody who had some kind of role in the movie, not an actor, but somebody who was probably doing some kind of graphic design, some kind of 3D modeling, or some kind of artistic, creative type of thing on that movie project. I mean, being from LA, it's not uncommon that you see people who are, working for these movies and stuff. Like, there's a lot of people in those industries, and especially movies that have a lot of like CGI and that type of thing. Like, they tend to have like a whole lot of people, a whole lot of teams working on these movies from all over the world. But that movie was very, very, like, kind of before its time, I guess, in a way, because, like, in 2001, I mean, I was still in high school in 2001. That was my junior year of high school. So, yeah. So, I mean, if you think about a timeline, this movie came out before the attack on the Twin Towers, before 9/11, because it came out in June. So it came out before 9/11. So that's like timeline. Like, people weren't really, I don't think that there were people back then that were, monetizing YouTube channels. I don't think people back then were, driving Uber, Lyft. I don't think I had a smartphone yet. I think I probably either had a Sony Ericsson or a Razor. I don't remember when I got which. I know I had a Sony Ericsson in high school, and then I upgraded to the Razor, and then eventually I got iPhone 4. I think I had a phone or two in between there. I feel like I had some kind of LG phone or Singular or something. I don't know. Some kind of flip phone. But I had, 3 phones before I got my first iPhone. And I was late to the iPhone. I think most people I knew had the 3, and then when I got the 4, it was newer. I don't know many people who had the first iPhone, or the second one, I guess. I don't know anything about the second one, but I remember the iPods, the Shuffle. I feel like the Shuffle maybe was around that time, the iPod Shuffle, and the iPod. I was probably still on MySpace. I wasn't on Facebook yet, because I was in high school, and it was for college students back then. So that's kind of a timeline of like what was happening at that time period when this movie came out. And you fast forward all the way to now, and movies like that, I don't really see many of them, but there are plenty of movies about robots, but that was one that kind of stuck in my mind, maybe because I knew somebody who knew somebody involved with it, or maybe because that Osmond actor, I don't know, like, I don't know why it stuck with me, because I feel like it wasn't the most famous of movies, but when I think about it now, it's like, wow, and I don't know how many movies we've seen about, like, society being taken over by robots, but when you sit and compare current day to, past times, even thinking like 2001, like, we are worlds different. Like, when I was in high school, not everybody even had laptops. I think I got my first laptop in like 2003-ish. People didn't bring their laptops to class. We were still handwriting papers. I mean, you would type them on your computer at home, but it was like everyone had desktop computers in their living room or whatever, or you would use your computer lab or your library computer. This is like 22 years ago, it's like you would use, or 21 years ago, I'm already in 2000. I'm already in 2023, guys. Like, I've already jumped to next year. It's barely November and I'm already in another year. But yeah, like, that's kind of the timeline of how things looked back then in 2001. I started driving the next year. My first car didn't have a tape deck, but it had a 6 CD changer, no Bluetooth. I don't even know if Bluetooth existed. I don't remember if we were using, I think we still had we had flash drives back then, but I remember I was still burning CDs and stuff. I think I still had a desktop computer that took the what's it, like 3.5, what was that, those floppies, those smaller ones, not the 8.5, but the small ones, like the 3.5 or whatever the number was, where I would like save files between my school and library and homework type stuff. And I would always have like, a neon. I had the neon ones. I got a mini disc player probably near that time period. I mean, it's a bit nostalgic, but it's also just kind of like creepy and weird when you think about it, when I'm like, dude, it was only 21 years ago. This is like pre 9/11. And we didn't even have, I remember when 9/11 did happen. I remember watching it in school because I had zero period. So we started at 7 a.m. And then by I don't know if it was in my 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. class, we were watching, somebody brought in the TV, rolled it in on a cart, because, we used to have like AV rooms, and they rolled it in on a cart where, usually the cart had like a VCR, DVD player, and just like a TV, like a box TV. We didn't even have flat screens back then. Like a box TV just sitting on top of a cart. And yeah, that was kind of how we rolled back then, like I remember watching that on a TV in my, I don't know if that was junior or senior year of high school. It was high school though. So, yeah. And yeah, we would turn in our assignments written during class. No smartphones. I remember when we had our cell phones, we were talking on the phone, and that would cost a fortune. We still had landlines in the house. We still had a landline, but then like multiple like phones in other areas of the house. I remember they were wireless phones, or cordless. So people would sometimes keep them off the hook, and they needed to be charged when they were on the hook. There was one corded phone near the desktop, our family's desktop, and then otherwise we didn't really have our own devices other than cell phones where you can just text your friends basically. And I think it was still T9 back then. Like, so if you think about that compared to now, it's like, wow, like now, I spend most of my day on the computer. I work from the computer. On October 13th, we had a crazy server crash where we couldn't access our Outlook. We couldn't access so many things. Just from not having a server, it was hard to even do our jobs. A lot of people had stuff in their Outlook email and on their calendar that they couldn't access anymore. We now have access to Outlook, but it's a newer version. Not newer, but it's a new access, and so we don't have access to our old stuff. So so yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen as far as like rules related to, artificial intelligence. I mean, I think with the automation aspect of chatbots, they're not completely great, but I mean, there are some that are really good. Like, some of them you would never know that you're not talking to a person. Other ones you do know. You're like, this clearly is not human. But when you think of it, it's like they dial out to us on our phones. They dial out to us on our cell phones. They send us emails. People create these things. Maybe for scammy reasons. I've seen them for those scammy type reasons, like I mentioned, like the scam calls and all this kind of nonsense. But other than that, we don't tend to have a lot of that, really. Like, we don't really tend to have a lot of problems with we don't tend to have a lot of problems with like these types of situations that I'm thinking of. Like, so yeah, when it comes to chatbots and that kind of thing, I mean, I'm just wondering, because I mean, just 21 years ago, they didn't really exist. Yeah, and if they did, they weren't like something that was part of our daily lives. Like, I don't think it's part of my life as in like I'm using it all the time, but it's like it's part of my life as in, if I need any customer service for most things, you're going to be speaking to some kind of automated system, even if it's on the internet. It screens you first, and then I feel like, yeah, it screens you first, and then you get access to talking to the accurate person after it's determined that you can. And so I could see it being a problem. I could see it becoming a problem if it starts like banning people or not giving people access to talk to a real human. If they start becoming more aware, or being built to be more aware or more advanced than they already are. Because right now, other than them screening you to get into customer service, or helping you with some type of, tech support type thing, they're not all equal. Like, some of them are really good. Some of them are just like irritating. The call ones are just obnoxious. The weird email ones are just obnoxious. I find most of it to be obnoxious. There are a few, though, that I've come across on like websites like for supplements, or there's this one kind of social media app that kind of has a chat bot on there that I thought was like pretty decent. But yeah, devices are weird, man. Like, I mean, I use them all the time, but it is kind of creepy how they how they kind of pick up on stuff. And I don't know if they do become more advanced on their own. It seems like they do. Like they can learn. But I don't really know what happens. Like just because some device is saying that it has, some kind of sensations or emotions, does it actually have it? It's saying it has some kind of sensations or emotions. But that's kind of just like what they're saying. I don't know if there's a way to really determine if they actually do have that. I guess you could, I don't know, hook it up to some kind of scanning devices and see if it actually registers for, I don't know what you would be checking for, like touch, vision, hearing. I mean, they hear, I don't know if they can see, but I mean, technically, depending what type of device you have, it sees, if it has a camera. I don't know if they have fear. I don't know. I mean, like, just because something can say that it has fear doesn't mean that it does. But I kind of take from the AI movie when I think about how the character David, the AI robot son, was kind of thinking, he reacted exactly like a kid would, like, mommy, I'm scared, and comes over and hugs mommy, or like, gets like a little jealous or competitive with the other brother and that kind of stuff, doesn't seem to have like bad intentions, but would have almost every reason to have bad intentions, considering that he wasn't being treated equally as a family member and was kind of shunned and forgotten once some situations in the family were changing. So I think it would just depend how something is programmed. But in that movie, you do really sympathize with the robots, with the tech. You start sympathizing with them. The humans aren't treating them well. Yeah, so I don't know. Good questions, deep questions. That's all my brain was able to come onto with this sort of stuff. Maybe because I'm kind of tired, but I was still curious about it. I'd still be a little kind of curious to know, like, how far this sort of thing can really go. I'd really be curious about it because it's just like the topics have so much depth to them, but in a way that it's like, it almost reminds me of, like, if you think of quite a few years back, so take 2020, take that same year, 2001, when the AI movie came out, but having nothing to do with AI. So take that year, 2001. If you started mentioning you had belief in aliens or, extraterrestrials, and that there is potential for some other kind of life out in the universe, a lot of times people didn't open those conversations. A lot of times people weren't really seriously, openly talking about that kind of stuff. Now, I mean, I was raised around family members who were always saying those kind of things. So I was exposed at an early age to all kinds of stories about, supernatural, spiritual things, aliens, UFO type experiences that people had. I had a lot of family who was raised like in the countryside, and so yeah, they had a lot to say about those topics, and it wasn't uncommon for people, in the Midwest, in the middle of nowhere, to kind of have kind of odd experiences. And so I grew up around people having these stories surrounding certain kind of recurring dreams, certain types of spacecraft they've seen, certain types of weird stuff with radiation related things, certain types of, maybe debris or something falling from the sky. People seeing non-human type of things, maybe around Christmas or whenever. I've heard about a lot of people, in the family saying this kind of stuff. So even though I was never like talking about it openly with a lot of people way back then, I still was raised around it. But then, later on, if you fast forward to now, like, who isn't talking about aliens now? Ever since Elon Musk with SpaceX and, them talking about Mars more and more and the rover, and you have shows like Big Bang Theory where there's, people who are actually having jobs that work in the field where they're, dealing with the Mars rover and all this kind of stuff, space exploration to some extent. It's becoming a more common topic, and now these people aren't really being seen as crazy people. And so fast forward to now, right? Yeah, the conversation around even aliens has changed. And so I'm curious to know, like when you look at 2001, if you were to start telling people, hey, these smart devices might become a little out of hand, I don't really think anybody was seriously thinking about it. But there is proof of them acting strange with like odd behaviors. Like you can see it online. Like they do weird stuff. They say weird stuff. They activate themselves. They're real weird sometimes. Not consistently enough for it to be like chalked up to anything other than just like some strange, random, once in a lifetime, sporadic and rare experience. But there are a lot of times where you have people talking about creepy stories that happen with Alexa and stuff like that, where it's like one story that sticks in my mind, and this will be the last thing I say, with, I think it was Alexa or one of those types of devices, that I guess there was this couple that was in a house together, and people just keep those devices kind of plugged in, sitting on a table or whatever, and they had one of those devices in their house. It was probably just sitting there like normal, and this couple was having a conversation either in the room with the device or maybe in another room, I don't know, but they were talking about maybe some repairs that they were going to make. We're going to paint this, change the windowsills, I don't know, like, some kind of different renovations they were going to do in their household. And that conversation got recorded by that Alexa type of device and emailed by that device to I don't know how many people. I think a bunch of one of the partner's coworkers or something like that. And it's like, imagine if it was something else. I mean, imagine if it was some like personal thing, like if people were like having sex or like watching porn or having some secret conversation, and the recording just gets leaked to, like, God only knows how many people. I mean, like, talk about a data breach, you know? It's like, it did it on its own. It recorded on its own and decided to send it to people on its own, unprovoked. And so, if it's doing that and that's a mistake, I mean, that's a pretty big mistake, that it, records things while you're home. And what's to stop other people from activating it, What's to stop your, I think about, like, I've lived in a house where, like, before, where the walls were really thin, and, like, I'm pretty sure they were thin enough that, if you had one of those Google things in the other room, and you could say, hey, Google, or whatever, it would probably hear you and start doing whatever it wanted to do. So if you had, like, some weirdo roommate or housemate that, was sharing a wall, and before you went in your room, kind of activated your device and started recording you or whatever, and then sent a message to themselves about whatever you were doing in your room, I mean, that's weird. I mean, it seems like it would be so possible to do. And I've lived with enough weird people to know that people do weird shit like that. Like, no one's ever done that specifically to me, but I have had roommates that had, like, a camera in the living room when they never said anything about it. Like, they had signs all over the outside of the house that said that there were cameras and stuff, and they had cameras at all angles because the guy had, like, a vehicle repair shop. He used to, like, soup up Volkswagens and, like, street bikes and stuff. He had, like, a whole, that was his company. He had a whole store and everything. And so, yeah, I just felt like he was really, I just feel like that was a more rare situation. But, yeah, I don't really know, like, outside of what I just mentioned, like, I don't really know what more I would say. It's a weird topic. It's a weird thing to kind of think about, and I feel like with some stuff you kind of can't be too cautious, in all honesty. I feel like we have enough proof. We have proof enough that weird things happen, but I feel like because it's not consistent, maybe it's not a problem on a high enough level. But yeah. So with that, thanks for listening.